Welcome back. Today I'm here with PROVITY's first affiliate, the Swedish Streetlifting champion Albin Gården. Today we're doing an underrated versus overrated video. White flag is underrated, red flag is overrated, and both flags is equally rated.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to do this video.
First one, this is interesting. Training form.
Oh, I'll let you start.
Okay.
So that I don't.
I say overrated.
Okay, I'm
100% overrated.
In streetlifting and in calisthenics, it's very, very normal to have this concept of training form. Training form, if you don't know what we're talking about when we're talking about training form, is doing lifts that are not up to comp standard. Not hitting depth in dips or squats, or when you're doing pull-ups, you're not like fully locking out every rep and not doing like a dead stop between every rep like you would in a 1 rep max. You're starting from a dead stop. In powerlifting, the training form concept is not really a thing, and I think that's because in streetlifting and in calisthenics it hasn't really come to like such a high level that people have taken it as seriously and really read into like the sports science and stuff to train with competition form all the time. The goal with your training is to get better at performing in competition, right? Just based on the law of or on the training principle of specificity.
Yeah.
You want to perform all your training in the same like form as you do in competition, because that's going to make you better at doing the form at competition. In school I studied sports science. My teacher showed us a study of like when you compare people who do back squats, and one group does not hit depth, one hits exactly depth, and one goes deeper. And then you test these three different groups and see in the end how much do they increase in 1 rep max in the parallel squats. The training group that didn't hit depth, they gained like not very much strength in the parallel squats, and the group that did the parallel squats, they gained a lot of strength in the parallel squats, like in an increase. And the people that hit like that went deeper, they also gained a lot of strength. Actually there was no like big difference between hitting depth and going even lower, and that just goes to show for me like if you're not hitting depth on training and hitting depth like as you would in competition, it's just not as good for your results as if you would do competition standard depth and stuff. That's what I think, at least.
And here's the thing also, for me it's really important to be clear about what type of target group you talk about. And for the PROVITY audience, and probably if you're watching this you're more towards the competitive side, you're serious about your training and maybe even trained to compete, then it's really important to do what you're gonna do in the competition. For me that just makes 100% sense, that if you want to do pull-ups with a certain form, you need to train with that form. But let's say you're just working out for fun, you wanna, you know, build muscles, or even not then if you wanna build muscles, but let's say you're just working out because you enjoy it. Then having training form is fine. But for me it doesn't make sense to call it training form if you compete, because if you compete then training form should be competition form. So just to clear that out, if you're not competing, do whatever you like.
Exactly.
But if you're competing, you have to do certain things, you have to train what you're gonna do in the competition. Like the reason why I see people do training form is just a way to kind of boost your ego, I would say, to get like faster progress, do in streetlifting higher numbers. That like only positive side with that is that boosting your ego can be a positive thing. Then you get happy about the workout, you know, you smile when you get to the gym because you do heavy numbers. But that is just gonna stab you in the back when you do the competition and realize that you're gonna decrease your numbers so much. So if you do 100 kg pull up in training, but then you can do only 80 kg pull up on competition because you don't have the form, or you don't even make your free lifts because you can't hit the form, then that is gonna stab you in the back. So
definitely
be prepared for the competition, do what you're gonna do in the competition, and that is gonna make you the best athlete. Overrated. Next one, training to failure. This is a hard one.
I'm gonna say
I know mine. 3, 2, 1, go.
Why are you so slow?
I think it's underrated. I feel like most people don't even know what their failure actually is. Most people think that they go to failure because it's getting hard, but they don't actually know the failure, and they go to failure way too few times. So I would like to call it overrated, because you shouldn't go to failure all the time. But when I talk to people and when I look at people in the gym, you know, doing like leg press machine at the same time as they're scrolling Instagram, then you're not going to failure.
Of course.
So I feel like most people should get used to going to failure and should know how it actually is going to failure, and should have maybe a few sets every week, dependent on your training volume, that you're actually going to failure. That's my take.
I definitely agree with that. Like in a situation where a person doesn't know where failure is really important to do that sometimes to get the experience to know where it is. Why I say it's overrated is because some people train with, or it's like quite normal to train with like going everything to failure.
Yeah.
Because you think that harder is better, and also it's sort of the like what would you say? It's like the hardcore mindset, or like,
you know what I call it?
What?
I call it the Goggins mentality.
The Goggins, exactly. It's the Goggins mentality that you need to like push maximum every workout. If you train for like, and your goal is like to build more mental fortitude, then maybe that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna be more exhausting and it's gonna be harder to go to failure every set. But if your goal is to become as strong as possible or build as much muscle as possible, then that's not gonna be the smartest.
Yeah.
Because you can go like 3, 2, 1 reps in reserve, and that's gonna give you basically the exact same muscle gains.
Growth and progress, yeah.
Exactly. But it's gonna take much less
time to recover,
and it's gonna burn you out much more to go to failure.
100% agree with that. Like generally in your training program, you shouldn't have going to failure as a standard on every set. 100% not. So agreed.
That's good.
Next one, building muscles. I know already.
Yeah.
I have mine. Nice.
This one's very easy. But it's interesting to hear. I want to hear yours first, because for me it feels very clear as a street lifter when max strength matters more.
True, yeah.
But in strength endurance, I don't know as much. So I'd like to hear your opinion.
My background is more in freestyle and strength endurance, and generally when you look at freestylers and endurance athletes, they are much smaller than street lifting athletes.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that in strength endurance and freestyle, there's much bigger of a culture that you should be as lean as possible. And this was also my approach in the beginning. I was 59 kg, 182 centimeters tall, which is quite low body weight. That was because I thought that the lighter, the easier you're gonna be, and the more pull-ups you can do, the more dips you can do. And in theory, yes, if you were light as a feather, of course you would be able to do more stuff. But the problem is then you don't also have the like building blocks for producing as much strength as possible.
Exactly.
And these building blocks is your muscles. So with more muscles, you have more potential to do more reps, you have more potential to do heavier reps, you have more potential to do skills. If you talk about freestyle, for me, people get too caught up in that you should be as light as possible and that you shouldn't have too big muscles. But then yes, there's kind of like an upper limit. You don't usually see endurance or freestyle athletes being over 100 kg because you kind of pass a level where you don't get these benefits anymore. So that's one thing, that there's an upper limit. Another thing I would say is that it's also so much about like muscle distribution. If I gain muscles at certain spots on my body, yes, maybe it's gonna be unnecessary, but if I gain them in the sort of right places, mainly for freestyle, it's gonna have a lot of benefits. So if you talk about, for example, the planche, if you have more weight on your shoulders and traps and like upper body, it's gonna make the movement much easier because you get
more front heavy.
Exactly. If you have ever seen someone on Instagram do planche on someone else's shoulders when they do planche, that is actually easier than if you do regular planche.
About that.
Because the leverage gets different. The same with front lever. If I do a front lever and you hang in my shoulders,
that's crazy.
The actual front lever is gonna be easier.
That makes sense.
But if you hang in my legs, there's no way I'm gonna do it. Like never ever. And that's also applicable then to building muscles. If I build muscles on my upper body versus if I build muscles on my calves. So if I have more muscles on my calves and legs in freestyle, for example, that is gonna maybe affect it negatively. But if you build them in the right places, you're gonna be able to produce more force, and also the leverage is gonna be easier. And that's the main part for freestyle. When you talk about strength endurance, it's a lot about, especially if you talk about longer routines, it's a lot about having enough energy locally in your muscles. And the bigger muscle you have, the more energy you can store in the muscle.
In street lifting, I feel like people focus too much on the like becoming stronger as the neurological adaptations that you get. So like constantly lifting very heavy to get better neural adaptations and stuff. And that's like, it's correct. Like if you lift heavier, you're gonna get the better neural adaptations, and that's gonna make you stronger. But if you actually look at the science, the biggest strength gaining factor, if you take all the neurological adaptations and then you take muscle growth is what's gonna help you the most
That's really
become
interesting.
stronger.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So if you're a person that is like new to strength training, then my tip is always going to be like build as much muscle as you can, because that's just gonna make your lifts shoot up a lot until you like reach about the weight cap of your category, when you have like a lot of muscle and not very much fat. And that's gonna make you just much stronger. So for example, me, like I did bodybuilding for like 4.5 years before, or like muscle growth training, whatever. I didn't compete in bodybuilding before I went into actually streetlifting. And then in 1 year I was able to like squat 250, I was able to dip 140 kgs and stuff, or even less than 1 year, like 8 months. And that's only because I had a lot of muscle mass. That's why I think it's very underrated to focus on building muscles for strength. And then when you have the muscles, that's when you can focus on really making your muscles as effective as possible. But if you don't have the muscles from the start, that effect is like, it's not gonna be as important, I guess.
Okay, let's go on more to the nutrition side and maybe also recovery side.
Okay.
So next one is, you know, this typical 200 grams of protein every day.
Oh yeah.
This is a hard one, I think. This is a really hard one.
But this one really depends also.
It really depends.
Yeah. But I'm clear.
Okay, I have my answer also. 3, 2, 1. Overrated.
Okay,
let's go.
nice.
You can start actually.
Okay,
I want to
I
hear
can
your thoughts.
start. Basically, for sport athletes in general, or like strength athletes in general, and it's the same for like bodybuilders, the recommendation of like what the science we have is around, I think it's 1.7 to 2 grams protein.
Yeah, I would say 1.6 to 2.2.
Exactly, per kilogram of body weight. That would be for me, I'm like 95 kgs right now, that would be around 200 to 210 grams of protein per day. So for that person, then 200 grams is definitely something that you should try to have the best recovery and have the most muscle growth. But if you're lighter, you really don't need that amount of protein. The backside of eating more protein, if you're still trying to eat within a certain calorie range, then you're gonna leave out some other energy sources. So for example, carbs. So if you eat less carbs, then that can actually decrease your performance and decrease your recovery as well. Being fixated on 200 grams of protein can really make it so that you don't, for example, have as much energy before a workout. And then that's just a clear con.
I would agree 100%. Like if the question was carbs, I would say underrated. I feel like carbs is really underrated when it comes to elite athletes. When it comes to the general population, I would say it's a good idea to say that, okay, you should get more protein, focus on more protein. But the thing within what studies have shown is that for elite athletes, most athletes actually don't have a deficiency in protein. Most people hit these 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per day, because as you said, even for a 100 kg person, then the lower span is 160, just to make the maths easy, and the upper span is 220.
And all of that could be like optimal.
Exactly. So even 160 is optimal for a 100 kg person. But for the main population, saying that you should have 200 grams of protein, I think also as you, it's more harming because you're losing out on, for example, carbs. Then for me, I get kind of turned off when people do things they don't really know why they do it, because there is at the same time cases when you can go up more in protein. Those cases are, for example, when you're cutting, because when you're cutting, you're basically starving. That's how your body sees it. Then the body is trying to cut down whatever is not really necessary, and that's why you can lose muscles while cutting. But if you then have a slightly higher protein intake, you will signalate to your body that you want to keep the muscles, because the proteins are the building stones for the muscles. So for example, in that case, I would say 200 grams of protein every day is a really good choice if you're trying to lose like fats and not muscles.
But that's also depending on the weight, of course. But more protein then is better.
More protein is better. But again, 200 is quite high. So like imagine a 50 kg person, 200 grams, that's 4 grams protein per kilogram of body weight. So that's really high. I really think that people should, like, protein is really important. You should hit your protein goal, but it's better to go for then these 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein. Then in some rare cases, go even beyond that, like 2.2 and more if you're like doing a cut or stuff like that. I personally, when I do cuts, I prefer having a little bit more protein because it's also more filling, like you're getting filled in your stomach. And it's also something called TEF, thermic effect of food, which means that if you eat 100 calories from protein, then it's only 90 calories being left in your body because 10 is used to break down the protein.
It takes energy to break down, and also if you use it as energy, it takes more energy to actually change the protein into energy.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I prefer having a little bit higher protein intake when I do cuts, but on a regular daily basis, like a general recommendation for everyone, I would say you shouldn't hit 200 grams every day.
We had this course in school. We were supposed to track our calories and all of our macros and micros for 3 days. And I'd never done this before. So I tracked all of my nutrition for 3 days, and then when I looked on how much protein I had like 260 grams of protein per day or something like this. And so I think that people really overestimate how much like protein sources, foods that you need to eat to get enough protein, and that there is like protein in pasta and even in bread.
People see only like chicken or protein powder as protein sources,
or Greek yogurt or whatever your like protein sources are, but really underestimating how much you're getting from the other stuff. And if you're eating a lot of food, you don't really need to like eat half a kilo of Greek yogurt like every day. And really there's two more things I want to mention about it that are interesting. So one of them is like what happens in your body when you eat too much protein is that the body is going to make the protein to glucose, which will be used for energy. So instead of just eating glucose that can be used directly, your body will take the protein because that's what it has, and then it's just like it's an inefficient process.
It's an inefficient process. So that's what's going to happen when you eat too much protein.
That's why it's not the best energy source, because it takes time, so it's not as effective, and it takes energy.
And the second thing I also want to mention, I got it when you said that people are like too into getting a lot of protein and like hunting protein. That's like most people think that they always need protein, and then after their workout they go for a protein bar, for example, and then they tend to choose the types of protein that are maybe not all the best, like having a protein bar or these protein milkshakes, and those are like mostly, I would say, not super high quality protein, because these brands usually put amino acids that are the cheapest, so it's not this high quality protein, and they have only the cheap amino acids. So it's better than to, after your workout, go for a banana that is more glucose and then having a protein bar, I would say.
I definitely agree, but that's also a different topic of prioritizing carbs before protein after workouts. That's also what I think you should do, but that's really important. That's a good tip. Like check where the protein is coming from, because some brands also like just put a lot of collagen. Collagen is like the biggest example. Exactly, which is protein, but it's just one type of amino acid, which is not gonna be the best for example, building muscle. So for me, if you're getting enough energy, then check your protein, because you might be getting a lot, and try to count everything, count your bread and everything. If like your main protein sources are, for example, bread and like different type of vegetables and stuff, then maybe you need a bit higher amount of protein, because it's probably gonna be lower quality.
And that's also something interesting, just because you mentioned it. I'm a vegan, and for me as a vegan, I need a slightly higher protein intake, because
but how can you have so much muscles if you're a vegan?
It's roids. So the thing with vegan protein sources is that they're not full quality, and when we speak about full quality, we're usually speaking about having all the essential amino acids. So protein are made of 20 amino acids, and 9 of them are essential. And if a protein source has all of these 9 essential, you call them high quality proteins. And the more of these you have, the more high quality. The less of them they have, the less quality. And animal sources of protein usually contains all of these 9 essential. But vegan, always. And vegan options does not have that, so that's why you need to both have a slightly higher protein intake, but also compare them, or like combine them, so that you have soy protein and you have rice protein and you have different sources of protein like that. All right, next one, visualization. I know mine. 3, 2, 1. Oh, this is an interesting one. This is a really interesting one.
Can I start with this one?
Start.
Because I know that you have like read a lot more about like sports psychology and stuff than I have, so I'm gonna talk less than you. We'll see if you counter all my arguments. I feel like people have a lot of like routine means to like make them perform better, like hyping themselves up, and for example like visualizing and stuff. And I feel like some of these things can be a way to sort of block out the like stimulation, and that you think that you feel the pressure of being on competition. And I feel like that's not the best approach of approaching competition. I think for me, when I'm competing, I'm really just trying to think about it as I'm training, because I've trained like all of my workouts, I've done the same walkout, I've done the same technique and everything, so you should do nothing different. And for that to happen, you don't have to do all these extra steps that you don't usually do in training. You can just like do your walkout, do your lift exactly as you would normal, and actually just try to stay calm, and that will give you the best sort of performance. But if you do all of these extra things, I feel like it can even like stress you more and make everything into a bigger thing, and that will make it like make you feel more pressure, make it feel harder. And that's where I'm coming from. Yeah. But also I want to hear
it's interesting that you mention it, because how I see visualization
is different.
Is it as a coping strategy or as a way to also calm down yourself.
Yeah.
Because what has been seen in studies is that people using visualization use them as a coping strategy. So a coping strategy is something that is controlling your emotions in situations where you feel that are stressful situations or you feel nervous. So visualization is actually one way to, together with, for example, breath work or meditation, to control your nerves, control your emotions, and actually stay calm. Because when your brain visualizes it, and it visualizes you doing what you mentioned, exactly what you do in training, and that everything is gonna go well, then it kind of like your brain tricks you that this is what is going to happen. So that is one benefit with it. That's how I use it personally, and how I coach my athletes to use it.
Okay, but then if it's like, if it helps you calm down and does not help you like makes it into a bigger thing, then that's sort of my point as well. Then if that works for a person to do that, then I would completely agree with it being a positive thing.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so it's all about how you use it. And then also why I think it's so underrated, and why I would think this is the most underrated of all the topics we have today, is because there's so much studies showing its positive effects on the performance. And that's not only on the competition day itself, but also on training days. The thing with it is that there's a lot of technical components in most sports, not streetlifting and strength endurance excluded. And the thing there is that if you visualize, then you can build these sort of nerve connections and brain connections without even practicing. So for me personally, I think this sounds kind of too good to be true.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you can think and get better.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like I would be like, oh, I want to grow my muscles, and then my muscles was bigger. That's kind of how it works in reality.
Really?
And that's the crazy stuff. So what has been done in studies is that they have compared 3 different groups. One group is not, 4 different groups. One group is not training at all, like no training, no visualization, nothing. One group is doing only visualization. One group is doing only physical training, and one group is doing physical training combined with visualization.
And what's the visuals?
They did like a program, so they had every day sat down and then went through what you're gonna do. So let's take a streetlifting example. Let's say you're going for the dip, then they went through the dip a couple of times in their head with a couple of seconds of rest between them. So they did kind of like set and reps with the dip in their head, and they did it like really as it will be in reality. So in reality speed, they try to think of, you know, people screaming their name, and then they get called up on the stage, they put their belt on, put the weights on, go in, do the dip, and then they're finished. And then they repeated that a couple of times. And what the results of this study showed was that, of course, the group that did no training and no visualization got less results, like almost no results at all. The group that did visualization got much better results than the group that did none of them.
That's crazy.
So you got actually results from doing only visualization training and no physical training at all.
But because did you later test the actual?
Yeah, you did test. You did like a before test. Let's say if, like, of course it was not made on dips. Yeah. But if you did, I think this was a golfer's test, so they did it on golfers. So they tested before and then they tested after. But yeah, then the group that did the actual physical training got better results than the group that only did visualization training. But the group that did both of them got the greatest results.
Yeah.
So it is really shown that almost for every sport, it's concluded have great benefits.
Yeah.
And another case where it's even more beneficial is in case of injuries. So that has also been studied. Let's say both you and me do dips and then I get injured, or sorry, let's say both of us get injured. So both of us are injured, but you're not doing anything at all. And I do visualization. When we come back, my body will be back faster than your body.
Okay.
Because you're visualizing it while you're injured. So that is also one case where it could be super useful to do the visualization training.
Oh wow, that's very interesting. I'm
It's
gonna
really
have to look into
yeah,
that.
yeah,
much
look
more.
into it. And
Yeah.
the most important things to have like practical things to take with you is to do it in reality speed, because you know your brain can think so much faster than you can actually do stuff.
Yeah.
So make it as realistic as possible. Make it real time. Try to feel, you know, smells, sounds,
Make it as like
and
realistic as
make
possible.
it as realistic
yeah.
as possible, and do it repetitive.
Yeah.
Don't only do it once.
Do
Make
it, like,
reps
3
of it.
times, Yeah. And when would you do this? Like the day before, the same day? Like what's the best?
In relation to competitions,
Yeah.
I would implement this like on a daily basis,
Oh really?
as with your training. Yeah,
Is this
let's say you have
something that
6.
you're doing every day?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
visualizing.
I'm visualizing. I'm visualizing before my sessions
Yeah.
to kind of get into the mood and to understand what I'm gonna do better.
Okay, that's interesting. That's cool. I'm gonna try that.
Try it out.
And
Yeah.
I'm gonna look into it as
Try
well.
it out.
It's a very interesting concept.
And it has clear
Yeah.
studies, clear research.
Yeah,
that's the
no,
thing.
I trust
Yeah.
you. And
Nice.
then you changed my mind. I think that then visualization is something good. It
It's right.
helps you get more focus and if it makes you calmer.
Next one, back slam.
Back
So
slam.
before like a 1RM, you know, you slap someone's back and you scream lightweight
And
or
you
whatever.
scream and then everything goes red.
You
and
scream you're a
then-
bitch, and then they go for the
And then you
1RM.
forget everything.
I know what I think. Or no, I actually don't.
You really don't? I feel like this one is obvious.
Okay, I have mine.
3, 2, 1, go.
I put my equal.
No, you're
Yeah,
so
I think it's
neutral.
equal. This is the only equal I've done. I stick with that. For some people, it's really helpful, and for some people, it's
Why
not.
would it help them? Like you have to explain.
So when talking about like, okay, what's the reason why you do the back slam?
Yeah.
It's to hype someone up, and when we look at how you perform at your best, it's that you want to be at a certain level of arousal. So arousal is kind of like a word for how much hype you have. That's kind of the like arousal. So if you have low arousal, you're kind of calm and you're more like down on earth.
And
And
that's
if you
not
have
gonna help you be as strong as possible or
Yeah.
perform the best.
what do you say?
Perform the best or being as strong as possible.
If you're more calm.
Yeah, if you're too calm.
That's
If
not gonna
you're
help
too
you.
calm,
Yeah, that's not
exactly.
gonna help you
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
too calm.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then on the other side, if you're too hyped,
Yeah.
it's not gonna help you too. So if you
Yeah.
have a too high arousal, which means that you're like everywhere,
Yeah.
then that is not gonna help you either. So it's kind of like a curve that looks like this, and on the top, in the middle, that's
Gonna
where
be the
you
best.
are gonna perform the best.
Yeah,
Yeah. But the thing is that this top or this sweet spot is individual. So for some people it's quite higher, and for some people it's quite lower.
Yeah.
And it's also dependent on the type of sport that you do.
Yeah.
So for some sports it's quite high, and for some it's lower. Let's take an example. Like if you're a golfer doing a golfer swing, if you get a back slam and you're like super hyped, probably you're not gonna hit the hole. And maybe if you do like trying to hit the ball as far as possible,
Yeah.
but if you're trying to hit the hole,
Yeah.
then probably it's not gonna be the
Yeah,
best.
yeah.
But if you have, for example, in some cases like powerlifting or streetlifting, people usually tend to tolerate more arousal compared to more like focused sports. Like the curve is more that the more specific skill work being needed and the more like technical it is, the less arousal you should have, and the more strength included, the more arousal you can tolerate. But then, as I said, this is also really individual from person to person.
Yeah.
So for some people, they really need to like put in calm music and just, as we mentioned before, like visualize, and that is gonna make them more calm and perform better.
Yeah.
But for some people, they actually need this type of slap or smelling salt or super high doses of caffeine.
Yeah.
And for those, that's why I put equal, because for those, it's actually gonna be helpful.
Okay, so like I definitely hear you what you're saying, that you should be at this peak state of arousal that's gonna give you the best performance at this perfect balance of arousal to
Yeah.
have the best performance. And I definitely agree. Why I say it's overrated is because like if you have ever been at a competition, then probably, or this is like my experience, you're gonna feel nervous, you're gonna be hyped, there's gonna be a lot of people there. If you're doing a streetlifting competition, you're going out to the platform and everybody's watching you, and there's judges everywhere and there's lights and everything. So you're gonna have a lot of hype, like your adrenaline is going to be going, like you're ready. What I have seen a lot of times is that some people feel like they need they want even more hype than that, and then they do these back slams and things like this. But the result is that if you get more arousal, then this is probably what you talked about, and you go past the point of the like optimal amount that you want, and then your performance goes down because you lose all your focus and all your consciousness of what you're actually doing. So like some people will even, like, if we're not talking about just back slam, I know
some people slam in their face.
I know one guy, I'm not gonna name any names, but he will like take his like fingers and like go as hard as possible at the skin so that it breaks and he starts bleeding in the arm. And then when he goes out and he's gonna perform the squat, he'll like take the bar and he'll slam his head into the bar, just get super much. And I feel like the result of that is that you lose sort of the focus on the technique. So my argument is that
you get distracted.
If you get distracted, and if you're at a competition or if you're lifting something very, very heavy, then probably you're gonna feel a bit nervous and you're gonna have a pretty high arousal, and then you don't need that. Then you need something like visualization. You need to stay calm, you need to stay focused, because you're gonna have the hype. And I feel like that's why some people will perform much less on competition than they do in training, because they feel much more pressured and are way more nervous. And then like trying to keep calm, to me, seems like a better idea than like hyping yourself up more so that you forget everything, just as like a way to like stop the feelings, you know, from existing, or stop like the actual being, the presence, you know, being in the moment.
It's like a drug taking away from the reality. I would say for one type of person that this would fit is if you have like many competitions in your backpack, like you're super used to competing, because then, as you said, like the audience, the sound, the screams, that will maybe not affect you that much because you're used to it. So that is some case for people that are really used to competitions, and also people that don't have the same pressure. Maybe they compete just because it's fun. They don't like necessarily have the ambition to become world champions. For them, like if you have a lot of competition experience and you don't feel the same pressure, then it could be beneficial to hype yourself up a little bit more. So the conclusion is that it's really individual. For some people you need to calm down, for some people you need to get slapped in your face, whatever.
Slapped in your face is crazy.
That's crazy. I could do back slam, but I don't want to slap one in the face. No, that's not me. Like, but so don't watch someone else just because, let's say, the world champion is hitting his head in the bar. Just because he's doing that, you shouldn't. Like find a way that fits you.
How do you react in this situation, and what do I need to do to get it to the best state of hype to perform the best? No, for sure.
Nice. Good ones. And also we want to know what you think. So if you think any of these were wrong in these, then let us know in the comments if you think it's underrated or overrated. Thank you for being here.
Bye. Oh yeah, thank you for having me.
Let's go work out.
All right.